Pope Francis's funeral will be held on Saturday, April the 26th at 10 a.m. Leaders from around the world will attend ahead of a conclave next month to elect a new head of the Roman Catholic Church. A video released by the Vatican shows the open casket containing the body of Pope Francis laid in a church as mourning rites continue. The clergy watched on as nuns sang prayers over the wooden coffin, decorated with a red cloth. In a break from tradition, Francis confirmed in his final testament released yesterday that he wished to be buried in Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major and not St. Peter's Basilica. Francis, 88, died unexpectedly yesterday after suffering a stroke and cardiac arrest, ending an often turbulent reign in which he repeatedly clashed with traditionalists. He also championed the rights of the poor and the marginalized. For more now, I'm joined in studio by SABC International News editor Sophie Mokoena. Good afternoon, Sophie.
Good afternoon.
What can you tell us about the situation at the moment?
Well, we know that the Cardinals met this morning, and that's where a decision was taken in terms of the funeral, that it will be on Saturday, starting at 10 South African time and also local time. And thereafter, the Pope or Pope Francis will then be buried at St. Mary Major, as he requested in terms of some of the documents that were made available to the leadership of the church. And this was done in 2022 already in terms of his wish and on services and all the following procedures that will be conducted on Saturday by the senior leadership of the church.
And then in the coming days, all the cardinals will then gather for the conclave, and that's where they elect a new pope. Now, this is a tradition that's been going on for many, many years, and we all hope that maybe be from Africa. That's our hope here in Africa. But speaking to the cardinal yesterday of Johannesburg, he said it's not about where the cardinal comes from, it's about the right person. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it has been a tradition that this process is been done by the cardinals. They should be below 80 in terms of age, and only 160 will be available to do that, much as we know that there are more cardinals around the world. And you know that according to the church, this is a spiritual process guided by the spiritual being in terms of who becomes the next pope. And therefore, lobbying doesn't work in this case if we go about through the tradition of the church and the belief that this has to be a process guided by a spiritual being in terms of every individual who will be participating to listen to inner voice in terms of what needs to happen. And therefore, yes, you have people who have interest. We know that people would want to see a black pope, they would want to see someone from the continent, others would want to see someone from their own region, someone who's very conservative, others would want to see someone who is very approachable, like the Pope was, to take over from all the programs and the changes that the Pope introduced at the church.
Sophie, I've jumped the gun a little bit by going to as far as the conclave, which will begin probably next week. What can we expect on Saturday for the funeral of Pope Francis?
Well, we expect many world leaders to attend the funeral. And we saw earlier on, in fact, yesterday, early hours of this morning, the President of the United States of America indicating that he will be attending the funeral. You'd recall some few days ago, he met the Prime Minister of Italy, and there was an invitation extended to him. Perhaps this is a moment for him to also do that. And we saw the Vice President of the U.S., J.D. Vance, he was the last senior politician to meet the Pope, even though the Pope was reluctant, and it took time for them to convince the Pope to meet him, because he was supposed to meet him as early as Saturday or Friday, but it only happened on Sunday, and it was very short, and understandably so, as you know that the Pope had written to church leaders in America to speak out in terms of issues that he was not comfortable with, the issues of inclusion, the issues of discrimination, the issues of refugees in that country, where you have the current administration taking a very hard line on those issues. And therefore you can imagine how awkward that meeting was because of the position of the Pope in relation to the U.S. administration. But we expect many leaders to be there on Saturday, not only America, from different parts of the world.
Is South Africa sending a representative? Have you caught wind of that?
We haven't had any information in terms of who will represent South Africa, but you know that we have diplomats in Europe, and I think if there's no one from South Africa, a senior person from government, you will have perhaps a person who's deployed or posted in Italy or somewhere in Europe, going there to represent the country, but we are still waiting to hear from the South African government what are they going to do. But we know, as we pointed out earlier on, he did have interest in South Africa, and that is why he always included eminent persons from South Africa to assist him on issues that are related to the developing South, and particularly the poor.
And then lastly, what do you feel about the significance of Pope Francis's passing on Easter Monday?
Well, I think many people, those who are members of the Catholic Church, believe that this was a very important moment, and that speaks to who Pope Francis was in terms of his commitment to fighting for the marginalized, inclusion, and many other issues that people were not willing to talk about, particularly the world leaders. When you look at the conflict in Ukraine, Middle East, Sudan, South Sudan, and also the DRC. I mean, his last message was about peace in the world, with a firm focus on the Middle East, and a strong supporter of the Palestinians, but also a friend to the Jews. And his wish was to see these two nations living side by side in peace and harmony, including the issue of Ukraine and Russia. We saw Vladimir Putin sending a very powerful and emotional message on the passing of the Pope. That speaks to who the Pope was.